Hi, my name is Derek, and this is a tutorial about how to do social media network analysis with NodeXL and Kumu, two free, or at least freemium, social network analysis tools. Why do social network analysis? Social network analysis is very useful if you're looking at the interactions between entities, whether it be people or organizations or groups or causes. Social network analysis can help you discover who is connected to whom, obviously, who are influential actors or connectors, like bottlenecks or people who are well positioned within the network and probably have a greater degree of visibility over what interactions are going on within the network. If you're interested in group cohesion, you can use social network analysis to measure the closeness of groups. So very poorly connected groups will have few connections between individual entities within them, and over time, if your goal is to bring these groups together, you can measure the number of connections and see at the end the closeness of the connections, the number of connections that you have between individual actors. So I think that social network analysis is a really interesting way to look at groups and to gather certain kinds of information. So this video is going to be about free tools for social network analysis, specifically NodeXL and Kumu. NodeXL is a very powerful social media analytics tool, but it's a little bit hard to use and read. I love NodeXL. For certain, there's a lot of information that you can get out of the tool and a lot of understandings that you can get from visualizations generated by NodeXL, but for beginners who are just getting into social network analysis, it may be a bit intimidating. So I would say that it's a great way to get data, but maybe not the first tool I would use for generating visualizations. On the other hand, a tool like Kumu is an excellent social network explorer. It's fantastic for creating both explanatory and exploratory graphics. So graphics that tell you a single story all at once, and then graphics that allow you to click in and understand a little bit more and delve through the content. But on the other hand, it has no way to import social media content. You have to come with a spreadsheet of your own or build it within Kumu. So what we want to do is merge the two together. We want to use NodeXL to collect social media data and Kumu to make sense of that data once we've gathered it. Just a note, NodeXL is a freemium plugin for Microsoft Excel. You can search for NodeXL online, download the plugin and install it, and you can get a basic license for free, which will allow you to do the 2,000 most recent Twitter posts of a given query. Or you can get a pro license, which for nonprofits is pretty reasonable, actually, $239 a year at this time. And that can pull content from Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and other social media websites. So it's a pretty powerful tool for fairly cheap or even free if you're willing to put up with some limitations. Secondly, there's Kumu. And Kumu is a freemium app as well. It's open source and it's available on the web. Honestly, you are most likely not going to need a pro license. The only real value I can see for a pro license is to use to make private maps, which makes sense if you're making maps with some sensitive information on it. But if your goal is to spread awareness and communicate with people, you're going to be just fine with the free version. I've been making tons and tons of visualizations using Kumu, and I've never once wished that I had the pro version. With that in mind, let's start making a visualization. All right, so I'm going to jump over into NodeXL, and you can see that it indeed looks like an Excel graphic. The way that you get here, by the way, is you just type in NodeXL, and you have a template image that you can then, or a template file which you can open, and it will pre-populate your Excel file with a couple of tabs, as you can see down here, and you get a new nifty handy-dandy entry in your ribbon. So what are we looking at here? Okay, the two most important tabs here are edges and vertices. Edges are the connections between points. So if you are making a network map about times that people tweeted each other, edges are basically the tweet. Vertices are the points within a network map. And in the Twitter analogy, they would be the person who is sending a message and the person who is receiving a message, or persons who is receiving a message. With that in mind, what we're going to do is gather some data using NodeXL's functionality. On the NodeXL Basic tab, we're going to click Import, and then go to Twitter Search Network. And we are going to search for a recent conference that took place on the interwebs, ICT 4D 2021. And we're going to do a basic network analysis, which is the people who use the hashtag, who they are replying to, and who they are mentioning. We could go a little bit further with a pro query, which also shows their followers. But in our case, it's actually a cleaner narrative just to look at replies to and mentions. And again, this is up to 2,000 tweets. So this is recent content. And I'm going to say, okay, and it's going to go and fetch this information. If you haven't already authorized NodeXL with your Twitter account, you'll have to go through a quick process. It's honestly just a couple of minutes and fairly self-explanatory, so I'm not going to go into detail for that. It's going to say, do you want to turn on text wrapping? Sure thing. And voila, we've got a whole bunch of data. So we have vertices. Again, these are the people who are tweeting using this hashtag. And if we go and scroll down, there's 147 people that showed up in this query search. Quite a few. And we have some basic information about them. We have their image file. This will come in handy. We have their tooltip, which appears to be their most recent post, sort of useful. We have their description. This is their Twitter bio. We have the number of people that have followed them, the number of people, that they are following, the number of followers they have, the number of tweets they've sent out, and wow, that's quite a large number, and the number of favorites they have. Wow, that's quite a small number. And some other basic data, where they are when they join Twitter. And then if we look over at the Edges tab, we have the person sending the tweet, the person receiving the tweet, the kind of tweet it was, whether it was a mention or reply, the date that this thing occurred, relationship date, I'll have to remember that, and the tweet itself. Great. If we wanted to, we could generate a visualization in NodeXL. And there's a basic visualization. If we wanted to apply a different form of analysis, we could do that. So you can see that we have the bare bones of a pretty interesting tweet visualization here. You could do some work in NodeXL and make something kind of pretty. But that is not our goal today. We are actually going to be looking at how to pull this information into Kumu, which I think is a little bit more fun to play around in. All right, so we've got to prepare this data for Kumu. There's a couple of things that we need to do for that. One is that we need to get rid of extraneous tabs. With Kumu, it just takes these two things. It just cares about the people and the relationships. So we're going to delete groups. Yes. We're going to delete group vertices. Absolutely. We're going to delete overall metrics. Not valuable. And then we're going to rename these two tabs. So edges, Kumu calls them connections. And vertices we're calling them elements, if I can spell. A couple of other things. We're going to delete the top row of both of these so that the blue column with a title is the first name here. Under connections, we're going to make a few brief changes. From to. So the first two columns are going to be called from and to. we are going to name, let's see, we're going to make tweet the description. And you'll see why we do that in a bit. We're going to jump over to elements. Vertex now becomes label. And image file becomes image. And description should, yeah, remain description. Great. We are going to save this file on our desktop. I'm going to call this awesome analysis. It's going to say, oh, there's a problem. Whatever. I don't care. And close this down. Now let's jump over to Kumu. I've made an account on Kumu, and I'm using a free account. I'm going to go to New Project. And I'm going to call this project ICT for D 2021. Yes. And create project in my workspace. Now, Kumu is going to offer to give us some templates because you can use Kumu for more than just social network analysis. You can use it for systems analysis. I think their system analysis is fantastic. Causal loop, this is kind of good for design processes to see who's doing what and, you know, that whole jazz. What we're going to use it for initially is a stakeholder template. And I like stakeholder because it displays images on the node, so you have a quick visual reference for to go along with the title. I'm going to click Use this template, and we're loaded into a blank workspace. If we click on the triple dot here and click on Import Data, you can see that we have the option to link from a Google spreadsheet. This is really cool if you want to have like a live visualization. We're going to go to our Excel file that we just generated and go to Awesome Analysis. Click Import Spreadsheet, and if all goes well, it'll tell us, yes, no errors found. It'll look over the elements and connections and say, you have done a great job. We're going to save our import and see what emerges. Ta-da! Here is the beginnings of our network map. And already you can see that there's a bit of an improvement over NodeXL. If we zoom in, we can see the Twitter icon for each of these users. So instead of just blocks of text, we also have the person's face or the organization in question. If we want to, we can click in on content and see, here's CRS News. The description is their bio, so we have a little bit more information about them. And we have some of their data, favorites, the number of people that they followed. We also see, if we click on connections, we can see people talking to each other. So we see the content of the tweet. What a great session. What a great session. Happening now, something, something. WhatsApp. Who's talking about WhatsApp? All right, that might be something to look in for. Brand activism, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram. Interesting. I am not going to make a comment on that right now. Okay. All right, so we have the beginnings of a network map. How can we gather some insight about what's going on? Well, for one thing, we want to be able to see who is actually talking to each other. Right now we have lines indicating that people are connected, but we don't really understand whether Afro Diva is saying something to A4A Internet or vice versa. So what we're going to do is tap on the A button, which selects everything, and we're going to delete or deselect the elements. So we're just looking at the connections between people. And down here, we're going to click on direction and say directed. So right away, we see that A4A Internet was tweeting at Afro Diva, and a lot of people were tweeting at Afro Diva. I wonder what they had to say. Always a pleasure to see Afro Diva highlighting the importance of affordable and meaningful connectivity, especially for Africa. Cool. All right, so now we have a little bit of understanding of who is saying what to whom. Can we get any more information? So one of the issues with this map, we're looking at a conference, right? And very, very clearly, smack dab in the middle here, the ICT for D conference was arranged. The hashtag I4C4D was most used and most associated with the conference organizer. So if we wanted a whole bunch of visualizations to tell us that, yes, the people who ran the conference were at the center of it, that would be fine. But maybe we don't really want that data. What we can do is click in on the node, and hide the node. Now we get something a little bit more interesting. So this is a visualization of all the conversations that took place using this hashtag, or all the tweets that took place using this hashtag that didn't involve the ICT4D conference. So the connections that form here are for people who are talking with each other and not the organizer. Okay, let's see if we can gather some more insight from this. We go down to the blocks section here. Blocks is a bunch of analysis that Kumu can do on your behalf. And we're going to take a look at social network analysis first. We are going to say, okay, Kumu, take a look at one form of social network analysis, which is degree centrality. And as the description says here, degree centrality is the simplest centrality. It just counts the number of connections that we have. Obviously, ICT4D would have the highest, but let's see who else was super connected in a room. And remember, connected doesn't necessarily mean they're more influential. They just mean that they've more interacted with people. Say, I go around at a party and shake hands with everybody and introduce myself. I may have had more connections than anybody else at that party, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is like wowed by me. Maybe they're really freaked out that I'm at a party and shaking hands with people in the time of coronavirus. So I'm going to hit Discover Connectors and Hubs and see what emerges. It tells us that aside from ICT4D, the most connected entity was CRS. And if we click on that, we find that it's the Catholic Release Services. And it looks like a lot of people have been tweeting about CRS. So yeah, it looks like this person got retweeted. You can see RT CRS expertise, RT CRS expertise. Looks like they had an influential tweet and people are paying attention to it. They also ended up retweeting another organization. Let's see, did they say something to somebody else? Yeah, it looks like they did a lot of retweeting and were retweeted by a lot of people. So this was the sort of connection that they formed. Cool, interesting. If we wanted to, we could colorize these links. So if they started with the term RT, we could highlight them and then we'd know, or actually, you know what, why don't we just go ahead and do this? I'm going to say that we want to do a, we're going to decorate connections. And we're going to say that if a connection was, it's the relationship. If the relationship is mentions, we're going to make that red. Okay? And that counts for a whole bunch. We're going to call it mentions. And mentions can include retweets, so we might have to do a little bit more here. Oh, did that not go through? All right, you know what? I'm getting sidetracked. We're talking about social network analysis. But know that you can colorize the individual posts. Let's check out another form of social network analysis. We can also talk about closeness. So closeness measures the distance each element is from all the other elements. So it counts the number of jumps that you have to make to get from one post to another. Discover the sensors and spreaders, as Kumu calls them. And here, one of the closest, or the sensors, maybe a person who would have high visibility on what's happening on the network, although, truth be told, her value isn't that much higher than other people, is Katie Pickett. And we could see that Katie Pickett is the USAID. No. Did I click on the wrong one? Yes, I did. Is a GIS and land rights expert. And it looks like she mentioned a whole bunch of other entities. So great to hear from We Robotics, great to hear from TZ Flying Labs. Excited to engage with Thank You Catholic Release Services. So this is an example of an entity that actually had tweeted at other entities and maybe had some conversations. And it looks like, yeah, they retweeted her post. Cool. Okay. Now let's take one more look at social network analysis, and we're going to do betweenness. And that's the shortest path between two other elements. So if you counted the how many times an element lies on the shortest path between two other elements. So these are kind of the bottlenecks. If we had a network map that showed like two distinct groups and maybe one person in between, that would be a really obvious person. So like say you have someone with a whole bunch of friends on the left side of a political spectrum and a whole bunch of friends on the right side of the political spectrum, and was connected with everybody, or at least with units from both, they would have a high broker betweenness centrality. And let's take a look at that. Here, CRS expertise shows up. It looks like the people who show up here are Chemonics, probably some of the highly influential, the big organizations that are showing on. What's interesting to me, though, just looking at this with a level of human analysis, is the story that this group tells me. So there's a whole bunch of people out on the outside that are only interacting with one or two. So the capacity center, some people are retweeting the capacity center, and that's the only connection they had relating to the conference. But obviously there's this big cluster sweeping down this way. And that shows that there's like some people who are influential, maybe tweeting each other, maybe retweeting each other a whole bunch. And then there are chains down the line. So somebody kind of on the outside here, Plan Global, got retweeted. And the people who retweeted Plan Global also retweeted this other character, Carol Ndozi, who I wonder if there's some connection between Carol Ndozi and Plan Global. So that's a question that we could answer using this network map. There's a continuation of retweets down the line so that you have conversations going on that are totally distinct from the retweet conversations that are happening here. One more form of analysis that we can look at is community detection. And here we're looking at communities that form according to Kumu's analysis. If we hit save and go to our settings page and customize, color elements by their community, we can see that they're colorized here for some of the larger groups. So, or some of the more distinct groups. So this is recognized as a group. And real quick, I'm gonna go over to changing view defaults. Nope, sorry, not systems map, social network analysis. So you can see the colors a little bit more clearly. So this is identified as one group. This is identified as another group. This is another identifiable cluster. These might be instances where you could check out the actors involved. And even within a complex communication structure where a lot of people are communicating with each other, you can see clusters that form. And that might be one way to look at your social network analysis. All right, so let's switch back in templates. And switch back even more. Here we are with our Kumu analysis. So what we found is a great way to explore the social media data that we picked up using NodeXL. By combining a free data collection tool like NodeXL, which is very good at gathering data and organizing it, but maybe not so good at exploring data, and importing it into a free data visualization tool like Kumu, there's a whole bunch of exploration that we can do to click around and better understand. And now, a conversation that took place on Twitter. And now we have a bunch of understandings, not only of who participated in a hashtag, but who might be the most noticed and connected, or at least mentioned and retweeted actors within this conference. Maybe we would want to reach out to them and move them up our ladder of engagement. We can tell, we can see that this was not a very dense conversation, in the sense that a whole bunch of people were communicating in a chain with maybe one or two other actors, but not as a part of a big group conversation. So maybe you might say that this is something of a weak conversation where, maybe there are some connections between actors, but not a very broad one. It gives us ideas about who we can reach out to. It gives us a little bit more context about what is said. This is the value of doing social network analysis in an explanatory and an exploratory tool like Kumu. And merging these two tools together can get you a really powerful story. So I hope that this is helpful, and good luck using NodeXL and Kumu to better understand social interactions online. Thanks.